I believe it's the fifth installment of our CSP Lunch and Learn, focusing on monitoring and responding to endpoint threats and attacks, with a primary focus on Defender for Endpoint, or Defender ATP. My goal in this session is I'm going to spend some time on the slides, but I really want to get into the Defender console and show you what some of the features are and run through some actual intrusion demo. So anytime I go through this, whether it's the slides or bouncing around in the console, or I should say consoles, portals, stop me. If you want to, you can just interrupt me, or you can raise your virtual hand in Teams, and someone will stop me, and we'll get the question answered. Why don't we start with Chris? Do you want to go through our upcoming modern endpoint management roadmap before we proceed?
Yeah, absolutely. So on screen here is our schedule for our webinar series. You can see that we've got several that we've already completed here, and they are recorded and available at the URL there, which is our CSP website under our Improving main website. But the one we're in today is monitoring and responding to endpoint threats and attacks. And our next one in June will be on BitLocker deployment and management. I believe Chris Ball will be presenting on that one. If not, I just put him on the spot, so he's going to be presenting that one now. But if you have not registered, we do have links for registration up on the Improving CSP website as well. So feel free to go ahead and use that link to register for our upcoming webinars.
Okay. So the agenda for this session is we're going to talk about some changes with Defender for Endpoint, or DFE. We're going to discuss the differences between Defender for Endpoint and Defender Antivirus. We're going to go into some details on how it actually works. Then we're going to go into the portal and review different portals, actually. Then we're going to jump into some labs. We're going to walk through the console itself, some of the features of the consoles, and then run through some intrusion and simulation labs. Then we're going to do discuss some new features, some new roadmap features of Defender for Endpoint, and then end with a recap of the schedule. What's in a name? I think we should start with identifying the changes Microsoft seemed to make weekly, if not daily, on the naming and branding of some of their products. As you may have been familiar with, Defender Advanced Threat Protection, or Defender ATP, is now Defender for Endpoint. Why they changed these product names at such a frantic pace, I'm not sure. It could be a rebranding effort, merging products. But whatever, Defender ATP is now Defender for Endpoint. Azure ATP is now Defender for Identity. And even the antivirus client on your local workstation has changed. It is now officially Microsoft Defender Antivirus. So Windows Defender is now Microsoft Defender Antivirus. And to be honest, these names could change next week. But for now, as of today, those are the security products from Microsoft. So the first question I get a lot is, what is the difference between Defender for Endpoint and Microsoft Defender Antivirus? So antivirus, the local antivirus client, you can see as a signature-based threat protection product. Its scope, or its limit, is recognizing known bad files, known bad events, whereas Defender for Endpoint watches for unusual behavior that might or might not indicate a problem. And it will then take actions, or if you allow it, to take action to remediate. One of these is AIR, or Automated Investigation and Response. So again, Defender, the local antivirus, resolves known issues. Defender for Endpoint watches patterns to see what may be different or what may have changed. So in saying that, how does Defender for Endpoint do this pattern analysis? Well, what it does is it uses behavioral analysis to detect anomalies. It's more of a post-breach investigative tool. So how this works under the hood is Defender for Endpoint essentially creates stored events within the core of the operating system. So when a new event is inconsistent from past ones, calling into question, for example, whether the person is using an authorized user identity, then DFE feeds this data or metadata about this event to Azure. Then the system builds a collection of behavioral patterns of data and looks for abnormal patterns. So in a real world practice, say for an example, a user opens a Word document with an attachment in Outlook or a Word document attachment in Outlook. That kicks off a PowerShell process that touches a bunch of files. A signature-based tool such as a Windows Defender antivirus won't recognize that as being a problem, but Defender for Endpoint would or could detect that the PowerShell activity is abnormal for this user and this process. It would then trigger and take action based off of your configuration settings. So really that's the baseline of what Defender for Endpoint does. It monitors behaviors on a machine, and if it detects something abnormal, that's when the magic happens. There's a lot more to the product as it's maturing. There's a lot of cool features that we'll touch on some of these, but that again, as a baseline, that's what Defender for Endpoint does. So next, I wanted to talk about the portals. So Defender for Endpoint has really three places you can do your things. You can use the newest, and it was in preview, I think, until this very week. I think the beginning of this week or last Friday, it is now in production. It's the Microsoft 365 Security Portal. In this portal, what it's done is merged multiple products into one center. It brings Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, Microsoft 365 Defender, all into one portal. So let me jump into this and just show you a couple of these portals. So this is the brand new portal that again merges the Defender for Endpoint, email and collaboration, or O365 products. So it kind of merges them all together into one location. I wouldn't probably jump into this just yet. I'm sure they'll need to work out some bugs and whatnot, but sooner than later, this is going to be the portal that you're going to use for all of these security features. The next piece of Defender for Endpoint that has some configuration is Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or MEM, which is the Intune console. This has some features of Defender for Endpoint that really do with configuration. So you can actually set up security baselines. You can do a Defender for Endpoint baseline. You can set up what automated activities you would like Defender for Endpoint to do, such as you can control whether or not you want them to kick off an automated investigation and remediation, or you just want to notify a security admin of a possible a breach. As well, you can you could actually configure the integration between Defender for Endpoint and Intune, or I should say MEM, because natively they're not connected. So you actually have to do a few things to connect them together so they can feed information back and forth. And lastly, but not leastly, is the Defender Security Center. Again, this is where up until recently, all the Defender for Endpoint management operations was done. But as you can see from the big splash screen on the homepage, hey, we have a new home. So they are pushing you to go to Microsoft 365 Security, which you should probably start playing around with to get familiar with it. Any questions? Okay.
Hey, Rick, I have a specific question, I guess.
Sure.
When you're talking about the configuration pieces, can you do things like control USB, those kind of things, access to USB or drives plugged in with the endpoint?
You can. Yep, you can control features like USB permissions. You can control features on what gets encrypted, for example. Yeah, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of settings you can set, and that is one of them.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
You're welcome. So the next thing I want to do is jump into the actual Defender portal itself, or the dashboard, and let's go through all the components of it and some of the features of it so you get familiar with it. So the dashboard, the very first page that most security operations administrators go to is the security operations dashboard. This provides high-level information on any active current alerts, any active automated investigations going on, and we'll touch into what those are in more detail later. It can show devices at risk, users at risk, devices that aren't onboarded properly or there's sensor issues, as well as the bottom pane shows you all the onboarded active devices in your environment. So again, the security portal is a good, or security operations portal is a good place to start for admins to see what is going on at that very second. The next component in the dashboard is called threat analytics. This is a rarely used pane, but it actually has a lot of good information. Not only does it provide information on known popular exploits, threats, but it also tells you about new ones that are just occurring, or some information on ones that could occur regarding, it could be regarding drivers, it could be regarding ransomware, things like that. So this is a really good, I know we don't have tons of time to do reading and studying up, but this is a great place to learn about what is currently going on in the threat universe. So the next item in the portal is incidents. Now, the great thing that Defender for Endpoint has done, it uses logic to put known issues or breaches or incidents into one ticket, you could say, or one incident. So let's say there were 7 alerts, but all 7 of them are the same type of activity. It lumps it all into one incident under the incident panel, which is a nice way to not be overwhelmed with data and see, oh, this breach, this happened on these machines, and we're going to go into some details. We're going to jump into a live portal here in a minute, and I'll show you what some of these look like and how you can drill down and see what's going on. Device inventory. This is a list of all your onboarded devices, your device health. It's just a good place to see, take a snapshot of your devices. Alerts. So alerts are, as I mentioned, incidents are a roll-up of all the same type of alerts. Alerts are individual alerts on one machine, many machines. So this is where all your one-off issues are queued. And in here, you can drill down into the specifics of an alert. What type of activity is it? How many machines is it affected? What's nice about this too is I'll show you there's a graph that really pulls out how far this is spread, what components it's impacting. So it's this is a good place to really see what's going on with the activity. The next category I mentioned earlier was automated investigations. You can set this up through the settings of Defender Security Center, but also you can set some of this up in Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager as well. You can set up for Defender for Endpoint to automatically begin resolving these issues, scrubbing the files, removing scheduled tasks, doing whatever it identifies is the problem. A lot of clients I work with don't set this to automate. They pretty much set it to send me a notification, send me an email saying something has occurred. I want to go in and take a look before anything is remediated. But this functionality is here. You can set it and forget it. So, and it works pretty well. If it can detect it, it usually can resolve it. Advanced hunting and reports is basically reports are your canned reports, whether it's threat protection, device health, vulnerable devices. Advanced hunting is basically building custom queries to, let's say you want to know a specific file that's on every device. Let's say you want to know what device events or what events happened for a device in the past year. So this is basically custom queries. It's pretty easy to use. It's pretty logical query building. The next one is partner and APIs. This is a list of, basically you can consider it add-ins. These are add-ins you can incorporate into Defender for Endpoint to have either added functionality, added threat protection, added reporting, things like that. Actually, I want to stop here. Do you, Chris, would you like to touch on the new web filtering product that's been integrated into Defender?
Sure, yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So, web filtering at the endpoint, a lot of organizations will do a network appliance that monitors all their outbound network traffic and try to restrict traffic to certain inappropriate sites, gambling sites, things like that. But with Defender for Endpoint, you actually have that capability built into Defender itself. So at the endpoint, the policy gets applied to prevent Windows from reaching those sites. So, in this work from home environment where everyone's working remotely, they're not always VPN'd into the corporate network. And therefore, their network traffic is now being managed and monitored by those network appliances. So now with Endpoint, Defender for Endpoint, you can make sure that your endpoints aren't reaching out to inappropriate locations because Defender for Endpoint knows how to do that filtering, and it just pretty much blocks the website from loading in the local browser. So there is some configuration in that, and I don't want to get too far off your track, Rick, but there is some configuration with setting up policy to assign, what sites are restricted, and they're categorized. We're not necessarily putting in specific URLs. Not that you couldn't, but there's categories that classify certain sites based on threat intelligence feeds that Microsoft has actually licensed from one of our partners, Siren. You may have heard some of our announcements around Siren and their inbox security. Well, Siren is one of the leaders in threat intelligence and threat feeds, and Microsoft has licensed that capability for the Defender for Endpoint web filtering.
Okay, excellent. So moving on from the partners and APIs, we have threat and vulnerability management. I think the big component in this area is what is called Secure Score. There's no data here. We're going to jump into the other lab and I'll show you Secure Score. But basically, it gives your organization a security score. The higher the score, the better. And what's nice about it is it shows you low-hanging fruit. It shows you ways to increase your security score. Let's say it notices a large amount of machines don't have the latest Windows updates or a certain patch. It shows that maybe one of your products, .NET is a famous one. You're using a version of .NET that isn't supported and is vulnerable. Especially if you need to meet certain industry requirements, PCI, HIPAA, whatever it is, and you need to get to a certain level. Security score is a great way to go in and see how you can easily resolve some of these security issues. And they give you some specific details on how to do it as well. So security score is a great way to improve the security of your environment. So the next area is evaluation and tutorials. We're going to be going into this a lot more next, but this is where you can set up an evaluation lab and do simulations and tutorials. Service health is basically the overall health of the Defender for Endpoint service and the onboarding service. So if there's any issues, it'll let you know. Configuration management is specific to endpoints. How are your connection with Intune, device attack surface management? So it basically is endpoint and interaction or device configuration management. Settings has a large group of things. Some of them are pretty relevant. For example, you can do email notifications. So I mentioned, let's say you don't want to do automated investigations. You want to email an administrator, security administrator of an event that has occurred. Well, you can add some email and different types of email configurations here. Advanced features. This is a lot of ways to interact with other products. So you can do integration with 365 threat intelligence. You can integration with Intune, things like that. So yeah, this is where you can connect or allow and block files. Let's say you keep getting a false positive. Here's where you can add files to say ignore, things like that. Auto remediation. Again, you can set auto remediation levels. If it's considered a high impact event, you can then trigger auto remediation. If it's a low impact event, maybe you'll just have an email sent to you. Roles, device group, these are areas where you can set up access roles, permissions for certain groups, things like that. So there's some other things in here. You can set up indicators, alert suppression, again, for false positive, things like that. And at the bottom is onboarding and offboarding. So for those who haven't really played with Defender for Endpoint or did no rollouts yet, there's certain ways you can onboard and offboard devices. You can download a script. You can download a package. You can set up a group policy. You can do a Microsoft or a MEM or SECM package. You can even do mobile device management Intune installers for the product. And speaking of that too, it's not just Windows 10. You can now, as of today, you can do many server environments, Windows 7, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android. So all these are supported and you can manage through Defender Security Center.
Hey, Rick, there's a question in the chat on training for some of these is around best practices. I know in deploying this for a number of our clients, you and the Endpoint team have a number of best practices on onboarding, that type of stuff. Is it specific to the customer or the customer's environment, or are there some overall best practices as you think about deploying Defender?
I guess the over every client is different, but I guess the overall best practice is to start small and then grow your security baseline, your configuration baseline. Because a lot of times some of the intrusions, detections, and especially if automated investigations are enabled, I've seen it where a Word document is trying to be disseminated, a safe Word document disseminated to multiple people, and it keeps getting stripped out, right? So I would always start small and then grow your detection or your protection footprint. So I guess that would be the industry recommendation. But as far as how to deploy, the cadence to deploy, whether or not you want automated investigations, what your configuration profile looks like, that is completely different per organization. Okay. Next, let's jump into, well, I guess we're going to jump into the labs. So we're going to cover we're going to set up an evaluation lab. We're going to run through a simulation or two. We're going to do a backdoor exploit and then a fileless attack intrusion. So let me go back into the console. Now, again, this is our console that doesn't have any data in it, but I wanted to show you how the evaluation lab works, because this is a fantastic product, especially if you're new to the product and you want to see how things work and how the Defender for Endpoint shows intrusions and what it does for intrusions. The evaluation lab is fantastic for a couple reasons. So let me just walk you through the setup of a lab. We're not going to wait for the devices to the VMs to build, because I already have that set up and it'll take too long. But so let's say you want to do 3 test VMs and you want to last for 72 hours. You have to agree to the Microsoft privacy statements. And you also, I strongly recommend, if you do this, to add 2 vendor products for the simulation, Attack IQ and Safe Breach. They provide some great tools in analytics for simulations. So I would add those as well. So just have to add this information. And click next. And that's it. And then you click Setup Lab. And what this will do is it will build 3 VMs in your Defender Security Center evaluation lab environment. And once those machines are built, they'll actually give you accounts you can log into them with, and then you can run simulations. Now, the difference between a simulation and actual tutorials is that the simulations don't actually do anything. You just click a button and it spoofs the actual activity and shows it in the Defender Security Center. So let's jump into a populated environment. Okay, so if I go under the evaluation lab, you can see that I've built 3 test devices, test machine 1, 2, and 3. To connect to those devices, you just click connect over at the right-hand side. And let me bring those up. So test machine 1, I'm not going to run any local files. I'm going to run a simulation or 2 and show you how that works. So let me do that now. So I have test machine 1. I go to the simulation gallery. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. I go to simulations and I want to create a simulation. So I select all simulators. I select what simulation I want to run. Let's run, because ransomware is a hot topic over the past week. We'll run a ransomware infection and we'll run it on test machine 1. So we create the simulation and away it goes. So it's running now. I ran it yesterday to test it, but it's running now. So what you do is, let's say you go into the alerts queue. Now ignore all the rest of these, but what we're looking for is an alert for test machine 1. So let's give it a minute. So it's still running. And again, the difference between the simulations and the tutorials is the simulations, there's no actual touching of the machine. You don't have to do anything. All you're interested in is seeing what Defender for Endpoint, its process of how it creates an alert, how it creates an incident possibly off multiple alerts if they're grouped together. And then you can actually watch it run through an automated investigation and resolution, hopefully. Okay, while that's running, let me walk you through the other 2 tutorials we'll be running, and we'll see them all at the same time. So the next tutorial I'd like to run is a backdoor. It is for a Word document that this scenario simulates attacking using a socially engineered lure document or in a phishing email. So you get a document attachment in an email, you open that document, and it has embedded in it code that creates an executable on the desktop. It creates a run registry key and a scheduled task. So its job basically is every time you boot up the machine, it runs the scheduled task or run once that runs this executable to do something nefarious. And these are called ASEPs, or auto start extensibility points. An ASEP is a scheduled task, a run command in the registry. So if I run this, here we go. I'm always nervous. And it requires a password. What is that password? And that's Defender for Endpoint running, by the way, saying, oh, you have alerts. You can set it up where it makes noises or sends you an email, things like that. So I'm about to run the demo. It says click OK. I'm going to click OK, and away it goes. So again, what it's done is it's doing something there. Attack scenario completed. Press any key to close. So what this did is created an executable on my desktop. Of course, in the real world, it's not going to be that noticeable. It's going to be buried in some system directory. It's created a scheduled task. Well, you know what? It didn't create a scheduled task. I wonder if Defender for Endpoint already blocked that. Anyway, it would normally create a scheduled task in here. And as well, it would create a run registry key. So again, every time you boot up your machine, it's going to run one of those ASEPs to kick off this executable, which is currently on the desktop. So let me run the third one, and then we'll go into the console and take a look at what all these have done. The third one is a fileless attack. So this is basically a script that is run, executed in memory. A user could be tricked into executing it, or it could be run remotely from another machine that's already been infected. So basically it can be run either double clicking a script, run through loading a web page, run through a remote execution on a machine that's already infected. And it's difficult to detect fileless intrusions because so many administrators use scripts every day. They run scripts, so it's hard to detect that a malicious script is moving around. So what this code does, it launches a notepad, and that simulates an attack code, which is injected into it. That attack code attempts to communicate with an external IP address. So let's go ahead and run this. And away we go. And you keep hearing all my dings. That's Defender for Endpoint saying, oh my gosh, bad things are happening. So this says a shell code was just injected to this process. We're going to keep this open to watch the auto remediation action. All right, so we've run 3 demos. Let's go back into Defender for Endpoint and make some sense of all this. So the first thing we see, let's see if this is new. No, nothing new. Let me do a refresh. Okay, let's go down to alerts. I think alerts looks newer. So yes, we have some alerts, and they're already remediating, as you can see, in an investigation state. So let's go into the ransomware one. So you go into the ransomware alerts, and what you can do is drill down. You can always drill down in any alert and see the actual code that has been run and what it's doing. So you can see that this ransomware was detected. You can see that it's the WannaCrypt ransomware. You can see that, hold on a second. You can see on the right-hand side the activity that's going on with it. So you can see it's fallen under an automated investigation. It's partially remediated, meaning you can see that it's actually doing something. You can, all right, come on, Defender. Well, that's a bummer. Let's go back into it. You can classify an alert. You can say it's a true alert or a false alert. So that way you can build a database of things that you don't want them to create an alert, an incident, or do a remediation for. Let me go back into this. So another alert we ran was for the suspicious process injection observed. This was the this third detection we ran, which was the fileless script. This you can see that it is run suspicious process injected into Notepad. Where was that? Notepad.exe. You can see again that it's linked to another incident. So you can click on link to an incident. In fact, let's go into the incident queue. And now maybe it has built out an incident for what's currently going on. It has. So 511s. See, these are all new incidents. So you can see that if you expand some of them, they may have multiple alerts, but they all fall under one incident. So you see this ransomware attack has many alerts, but they all roll under one incident. So you can see the Locky ransomware was prevented. That's one alert. You can see a malware, the Cryptor malware was detected, and that was an alert. You can see that Locky was already partially remediated, which means they removed some of the files or removed some of the ASAPs that were going on. Cryptor is currently being remediated. So again, incidents, you can see that if an incident or alerts fall under the same incident category, it'll lump them together. Let me go to the, yeah, this is the, no, what I'm looking for is the backdoor. Let's see. Virus endpoint, test machine 2, there it is. Okay. So what I want to show you with this is the one where I had the, yes, this is where I had the back door. And what I want to show you in the graph section of the incident is how cool they will graph out what's going on with a intrusion. So if it was multiple machines already infected, this graph would show a web of machines that haven't been infected. And what's also nice about this, not only will it detect the machine, but it'll show you the files that have been used, the files that have been molested, and the file and maybe scheduled tasks updated, run once key that was updated. So this is a cool way to see what files and functions were touched by this virus and how impactful has this been already? Who has been, Defender, who has seen who's been detected or infected already? So that's a cool way to go about that. So if we go into our automated investigations, you'll see that for the third demo, I have it, if you recall, I said, don't run the automated investigation while this file is open. I set it up so we're waiting for the device, or we're waiting for someone to say, go ahead and run this remediation. You can set up for it, again, to auto run every time. You could set up for it to only notify every time, or you can set up for it to only certain events you want notification, or let the administrator click go on it. So now those are running. Now that I click the little blue button means go ahead and kick it off, kick the auto remediation off. So let's go down to suspicious process injection. This was the backdoor. So it shows that the process is it is in process. So it shows the test machine 3, what device was affected. It shows a suspicious process injection observed. It shows, it's still running, but waiting for device to actually resolve this incident. So that's basically it. I would recommend going through as many evaluations as you can, because the more you get comfortable with what it looks like, what a ransomware, how Defender handles a ransomware attack, how Defender handles backdoors, things like that, you get a better understanding of what's real, what's false, what is a big security risk, and what is something you just need to call someone up and slap their hand. Yeah, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Any questions about the simulations? Okay. And I also want to mention too, as far as the simulations and labs, if you want a personal demo of some features, let us know. I'd gladly sit down with you. We can go through a couple of these simulations and we can go in even more detail on what it's doing and how it's doing it. So next I want to talk about the Microsoft 365 roadmap specific to Defender for Endpoint. Let me pull that up. So if you guys aren't familiar with the Microsoft 365 roadmap, this gives you, for many products, an idea of what just launched, what's coming up for different products, and it gives you an idea of what you can possibly do in the future. So we're only interested in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And you can see what's been released already, December 2020. A new one is May 2021, and that's Microsoft Defender for Endpoint web filtering. So this feature for Endpoint enables security administrators to track and regulate access to websites based off of specific content web filtering. Chris touched on how it was always a third product. Well, now Defender for Endpoint has integrated these features through a third-party product into their own console. So that's kind of cool that web filtering is now done through the console itself and not a third-party product. Another one we have is, what's the other one I wanted to look at? So now there's support for management for Windows 8.1, software vulnerability assessment, as well as configuration assessment. So basically 8.1 devices are now supported, as well as Mac, threat and vulnerability management for Mac. That came out, well, not that long ago. As I mentioned, Mac and Linux, Unix are now supported. And it's not that difficult, especially if you're using a delivery product for Mac OS like Jamf or any other products. It's a pretty easy way to get it out there and get them onboarded. I just did a impact analysis for Mac machines as well as Windows machines for Defender for Endpoint. For Windows machines, there is no real impact because it's leveraging tools already on the machine, such as Windows Defender or Microsoft Defender antivirus. In the Mac OS world, there wasn't much impact either. It's a pretty lightweight client, and it didn't really have any impact on the device. So to finish up the series roadmap, do you just want to mention anything, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of recapping, our schedule for upcoming webinars. We'll be continuing with the BitLocker deployment management, and this is hopefully building upon each session. We're helping paint that story of how to establish a strong and robust endpoint management strategy. So as we continue through our series, when we look near the end of the year, we're kind of wrapping up with and getting past analyzing what you have, enforcing the configurations, enforcing compliance and security controls, managing mobile devices, and then kind of wrapping up with how do you clean up the environment, because you do have to manage your endpoints even as they are retired out of your environment. So Rick, I know we have a few more minutes here, and I didn't see any other questions coming through the chat, but I was wondering, would you be able to walk through a little bit some of the individual endpoint capabilities? So when you select the devices from the portal, being able to initiate some manual activities. So if you were responding to a breach, some of the things that you could perform through the endpoint manager, or not the endpoint manager, the Defender for Endpoint console. Or hate to put you on the spot, but
No worries. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, there are some limited functionality you can do through the Defender console. One of the, hold on a second, give it a second. One of the things you can do is you can run a scan from the console on a device. So let's say there's an alert or an incident that's been created on a device. You can actually run a antivirus scan. You can run a partial or quick scan, and you can run a full scan. Some of the other things you can do is you can collect an investigation package. An investigation package is a way of collecting a lot of information on a machine, more than the console itself natively gives you, to start analyzing what may be going on with it. For example, an investigation package will give you what patch level are they at, what branch, what things could be missing on the machine. If an automated investigation isn't automatically kicked off, or let's say you don't do automated investigations, but you're confident that you want to kick off an investigation, you can do that on the machine. You can restrict app execution for known bad apps, or let's say you don't want them to run, weather bug or something on their machine. You can restrict apps execution. You can isolate the device. Let's say there's all kind of a virus storm happening on a device. You can isolate it. That way it'll give you some protection while you fix what's going on. So yeah, those are basically the things you can do from Defender for Endpoint on a local device. The running a antivirus scan, you could actually set policies to run scans. Well, you guys know there are multiple ways you can do that. You can do that through group policy, you can do that through Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and you can also do that through a configuration for Defender Security Center.
Hey, Rick, what's the live response session?
The live response session is you actually can connect to a device. You can connect to, anyway, you can connect to a device, kind of like remote, Windows remote, but not quite, because you're connect to their security environment. You're going to connect to their security logs, things like that. So that's what that is.
Yeah, I believe that's actually it's a command line, a remote command line interface, but it's not as friendly as just running like remote PowerShell. It's more similar to like Azure command line, to where there's I won't call it proprietary or a unique language, but it's a different syntax than PowerShell, but it is a command line interface.
Right. And what's nice about it is it's just focused on security logs and security information. So,
There was one other option in there for consult I think it says a threat expert or a threat. Yeah.
yep.
You might see that throughout other contextual menus throughout Defender for Endpoint, and that's actually not a third party, an external paid service from Microsoft. So Microsoft gives you direct access to their internal security operations center personnel through the consult a threat expert. You do have to sign up for that feature. It is fairly costly. I believe the last time I checked, it was just shy of $100,000 a year for 2 incidents per month to get their insights and guidance and pretty much their hand holding. But in a scenario to where you have an active breach or a mass attack on your environment, $100,000 might be a drop in the bucket compared to the financial cost it could be for taking down your entire business for a couple of days. So, but just that is a paid service through Microsoft, and you have to sign up for it.
I guess I'd like to finish this meeting and presentation with just a quick discussion, and let's get some opinions on that current ransomware incident with the pipeline. What is everyone's interpretation of that? Do you think we're well behind the curve with some of these products?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by, like, do you think the clients or corporations in general are behind the curve, or
Yes.
so I'd like to think no. I think it's maybe a result of the pandemic and not being able to properly manage devices, so they're off network. They can't be as fully patched and controlled and up to date as they can be. The other piece we all know from on the email side, the phishing attacks and those things are getting more and more sophisticated. They're harder and harder to differentiate from a real attack. But I also, for this particular one, I feel like there's more to it than they're telling us, just because of the scope of it. I don't know what tells me that, but it just seems like there's just not quite enough information, and it could be they're withholding it to work with the attackers to try and recover some of the systems, and they don't want to throw too much light on it just yet. Just my hunch.
I read an article where the majority of attacks you never hear about because it shows a weakness in an organization, so they don't want to communicate that they've been breached. So I'm assuming, especially in the financial area, it happens frequently.
Well, a lot of them have reporting requirements. So they have to do a certain level of investigation, and if it's proven to be impactful, there's exposure to customer data, those type of things, they have to report it. If they've lost data, but there's no reasonable expectation of leaked data or stolen credentials, they actually don't have to report it. It's kind of weird how it works. So, for encryption, it's one of the things we tell people. You have some baked in defense against ransomware if you're leveraging Office 365 through versioning. So if your files in OneDrive get encrypted, your -1 versions are all still normal, right? So you can roll back and recover from there. It's still not fun. I would still be vigilant on the endpoint, on the protection side, and on the education and awareness side for helping people understand what phishing attacks look like, where they are today, run the awareness training, run the simulated attacks, and help people understand when it's okay, when it's not okay.
All right, Chris, I believe we're done if no one has any questions.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone attending today's webinar. And as we mentioned before, we do have our upcoming webinar next month. I believe it was June 15th, where Chris Ball will be talking about BitLocker, so endpoint encryption, and how that plays into your overall endpoint management strategy. So I appreciate appreciate everyone's time for joining. If you don't ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I will be sending out a session feedback survey, and I know you guys probably get tired of receiving those from other pretty much everywhere these days, but we do appreciate any feedback we can collect, and we really try to tailor these webinars to provide you the most value. So your feedback is critical to ensuring that we are doing just that. So with that being said, appreciate everyone for joining in, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great work, guys.